Hello guys, how's it going? My name is Dal. One of the best part about patch 11.2, which is releasing oh so soon, is some of the refreshes that we've seen for a number of classes. From brand new talent trees to brand new adjustments, lots more quality of life improvements and community-based changes, and there's a number of different classes out there that are getting a bit of a facelift, a much needed one in fact, from DPS classes, healers, as well as tanks like Protection Warrior, but also Brewmaster Monk. Brewmaster in particular was a tank aspect that I felt was just abandoned so long ago, but apparently Blizzard does know that they exist and is looking to improve on their gameplay going forward, giving them new defensive options so they can be just as sturdy as every other spectral ones, because so usually they feel a little bit squishy in comparison, and they have felt squishy for a very long time. They're also addressing a number of other issues, like making sure that Niozawa, your one big celestial, is actually worth putting points into, but also players have discovered a couple of different talent builds for monks that help out a ton when it comes to their ability bloat, which has been a pretty big issue of Brewmaster for a very long time. So for today's video, I really wanted to take a deeper look at monk changes, primarily focusing on Brewmaster to see what are all the different defensive changes, celestial changes, and rotational changes this spec is getting, as well as all the other quality of life improvements. As always, if you guys want to see more regular class updates for the patch 11.2, be sure to follow the channel and subscribe. But otherwise, let's dive right in. Now, before we go over the big changes happening to Brewmaster, which are so good, I'm a big fan of what they've done so far. Probably a lot better than what they've done for Protection Warrior. Protection Warriors got some good changes, but then took away defensive. That got not a lot of people in the community excited. But the Brewmaster changes, on the other hand, are basically a bonus for the most part. Like 99% of it is a huge gain. But before that, I did want to go over some of the baseline changes the monks have gotten. One of them being Mystic Touch. As you deal damage to a target, it weakens that target, causing them to take additional physical damage. Normally on live realms, this is a 5% damage increase. Now on PTR, it's going to be an 8% damage increase. This is huge because one, it allows monks to retain their relevancy within raid content. In most cases, over time, as we get into later parts of an expansion, caster classes, although not always, but in most cases, caster classes tend to do better when it comes to gear scaling, like endgame gear scaling. Again, not always the case, not always like a guarantee, but that's a trend that I've seen over the last few expansions. So in a way, physical classes kind of get worked out of the game little by little, with a lot more focus on casters with some of the comps that people make. But this change allows physical damage classes to retain the relevance going forward. It allows monks to retain a raid spot within raid content, especially mythic raiding, but it also allows physical classes to continue to perform better. This is huge in raids, but also great in Mythic Plus, because right now in Mythic Plus, the comps are basically ran by Vengeance Demon Hunters, Unholy Death Knights, Boomkins, and Archimages. But melee comps, melee cleave comps for M+, they can actually do pretty well. There are some cases where they could do well. They're kind of sort of competitive. There's some viability there. Well, they're not universally amazing. They actually are competitive in terms of raw damage. So this helps those comps in Mythic Plus in the future. So hopefully we'll see a mix of comps that are physical heavy and magic heavy going forward. And hopefully there'll be a little bit more parity between different damage styles. Outside of this, they also changed the way Vivacious Vivification works. After casting Rising Sun Kick, your next Vivify becomes instant and its healing is increased by 20%. So this ability is no longer on a 10-second timer, which basically grants you the buff of Vivacious Vivifications every 10 seconds. Now it is controlled by Rising Sun Kick. For specs like Mistweaver and Windwalker, I actually think this is good because you have a number of ways to reset Rising Sun Kick. So this is massive. This can actually optimize Mistweaver for a little bit more overall throughput healing, because there's so many abilities that are tied around Vivify, as well as you being able to spread Renew and Mist. So being able to get a little bit more uses out of Vivify can increase your overall burst healing, especially during downtimes when you don't have any major cooldowns, because you'll be resetting Rising Sun Kick pretty regularly. This, in my opinion, can actually be very strong overall. This can also result in better self-healing as Windwalker, especially when you pair them together with a Shadowpan playstyle, because Shadowpan do have a whole Vivify on yourself, heals you for a lot more. So this could potentially be really good there. For Brewmasters, their resets on Rising Sun Kicks are not nearly as regular as Mistweaver and Windwalker, so there's some limitations there. So this is going to be kind of hit or miss depending on who you are. I actually like the change to this talent. I like how it's controlled by your abilities rather than a buff that you gain every 10 seconds. I think it's a bit more engaging that way. But for Brewmasters, in some sense, I guess that could technically be a little bit less good unless they reduce the base cooldown of Rising Sun Kick, which can be reduced by haste, but That's not necessarily a stat that most Brewmasters really invest into. Outside of this, as for spec-specific changes, we don't have a lot for Windwalker. We got one for Mistweaver and a whole lot for Brewmaster. For Mistweaver, they essentially went and they took all this rate cooldowns that every healer has and made it better for Mythic Plus content. So Revival as well as Restoral both have 100% increased healing within 5-man content, and that healing is reduced beyond 5 targets. So they just want to make it a little bit better for 5-man dungeon content. It's going to be overall a bit more of an impactful cooldown, and potentially could play around certain other talents that play around those cooldowns as well as cooldown reduction of those cooldowns to potentially make them maybe a bit more significant in M+ situations specifically. However, a huge bulk of monk changes will come to Brewmaster, and they've really done a number with this spec in particular. One of the things they wanted to address when it comes to Windwalker is they wanted to do a number of little things. One, your Celestial has been taking a bit too much of a backseat. So Niozawa, otherwise in the community referred to as Dave, has gotten a lot better. Monks can also opt out for various different damage builds that kind of allow them to play a little bit more offensively, but defensively at the same time, which gives them a lot more build variety. And also, they're trying to find ways to let them customize how they mitigate damage. And that is the best part. And I want to start defensively, because monks, Brewmasters, sometimes can feel very strong and sturdy, and other times squishy. And they're generally one of those high difficulty tanks to pick up compared to Venge Demon Hunters, Prot Warriors, I wouldn't even say Bear Druids, but compared to some of the other tanks out there, these guys usually are a little bit tougher because there's a lot of little things you gotta manage. And also some of those mechanics are not necessarily intuitive for a newer player, so you really need to know what you're doing to maximize the defensiveness of the spec, though it looks like the bar for, like, you know, the skill and the knowledge you need to be able to play one effectively is being lowered a little, but in the best way possible to streamline the spec just a little bit more. There's now going to be some ways that you'll be able to customize how you deal with damage. One of those ways is through Celestial Brew, because now there's 2 talents of Celestial Brew, either the Brew or Infusion. The original Celestial Brew is a 45-second cooldown that allows you to take a swig of a brew that grants your body a chi shield, absorbing a bunch of damage, scaling the more stagger you purify. So the more damage you can purify, then give yourself a big shield, absorb a huge bulk of damage wholesale if you ever need it. Now, there's a variation of this ability called Celestial Infusion. Instead of letting you absorb 100% of the damage you take, it now absorbs 30% into this chi shield, but the way that you generate the shield and its power level is about the same. This does allow you a much more sustained defensive option, especially when you're not preparing to eat a bunch of big bulk of damage for a massive, like, tank buster, but you're just trying to take constant damage in Mythic Plus or in a raid, essentially becoming a 30% damage reduction as long as the shield holds. This is massive and goes a long way in making Brewmasters feel a little bit tankier when it comes to M+ content in particular, where sometimes the damage isn't just in big bulks, but rather from multiple sources, and it's a lot of little bits of damage. Being able to reduce it pretty regularly with Celestial is huge, and you compare it together with Master Harmony since you get 2 Celestial Brews or Infusions, and this gives you just so much more survivability. As long as you're constantly rotating through abilities that can help reduce the cooldown of brews, this can feel very good together. Big fan of this, as it helps to smooth out sustained damage, and there's a number of ways to letting Brewmasters smooth that damage with a couple of different options. Another talent that they've added is called Niozawa's Resolve. Healing spheres now heal over 10 seconds instead of instantly, and their healing is increased by up to 80% based on your missing health. One thing that monks sometimes struggle in is when they get super low on health, like, you just start melting, you just start dying very quickly. But if you have a couple of these orbs available to you at all times, then you might be able to have this healing be constantly there, constantly ticking away at you. So those healing spheres don't need to be saved for a very specific moment, but can be applied ahead of time, which can be good against strong damage you take, but also better yet, sustained damage you take. And the fact that the healing spheres, healing over time effect, will actually scale based on your missing health. So as you drop lower in health, the healing is actually going to get amplified, which can be easily absorbed with Expel. And now you have this healing over time effect rolling on you. The lower your health goes, the more healing that you're going to be able to get out of Niozawa's Resolve. Right now, however, on PTR, there is a bit of a bug when it comes to the ability. It basically, you're missing out some of those healing over time ticks on it. That will need to be fixed. Its scaling isn't always working. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. So that will also need to be fixed. But overall, Niozawa's Resolve actually does a significant bit of your overall healing. It is very solid. It is constantly ever present as long as you're constantly chugging down or generating those healing spheres. And those can be generated a lot faster if you are constantly taking damage, which means you have a constant heal that is rolling on you at all times. So that can be very, very nice. The fact that they can scale up to heal you for, well, look what, 20 million health. So they can heal you for a tick of 3 million at a time can be huge, especially if you spawn a bunch of them all together. So this scaling helps smooth out the damage, especially when you get low in health. So while higher health, it's a low bit of heal, but sustain something that'll keep refreshing you. When you get super low in a dangerous situation, the healing spikes up to help you crawl out of that bad spot immediately. It is massive and it's very, very noticeable, and it feels like your healing actually feels like it's doing something for once. It is really, really good talent, and it's so versatile, it'll likely be part of every single build going forward just because it's super effective right now. Another talent that also further helps smooth out the damage you take is Zen State. Monks as a tank class does not do well when they get super low in health, and Blizzard has known this for a very, very long while. Previously they had abilities like Expel Harm. When you're super low in health, they would just let you spam this ability over and over and over to try to recover your health very, very quickly. They've known that monks don't do well once the health drops super, super low. But with Zen State, you now get a stagger increase depending on your health as well. Effectiveness of staggers increased by up to 20% based on your miss on health. So the more health you are losing as a Brewmaster, the better your stagger becomes. Normally, when you use abilities, you can just offset a portion of the stagger that you're taking at all times. Just a small amount of stagger offset. When you take damage as a monk, you take a portion of it to your health, and then you stagger the rest. You take it as a dot over time. You can reduce a huge portion of that stagger with Purify and Blue clearing it in order to reduce that damage over time that you're taking, that delayed damage that you're just trying to stagger. But now that you can take less damage to your health bar, more damage into the stagger bar, that Purify and Brew becomes huge when it comes to clearing that stagger as quickly as possible. It also stops your health from plummeting to zero as more of it goes into this delayed damage that you can now mitigate and control with Purify and Brew a little bit better. This allows you to control how much damage you're taking, putting the control in the monk's hands for once. So instead of just relying on a healer hoping, please to God, I'm full on red stagger, I am melting here, please throw me a heal, you can now control it a little bit better through abilities that can help reduce the cooldown of that Purify and Brew, especially when you're taking a huge hit, especially when you know you're going to be dipping super, super low. So overall, all these three changes, together with the new change of brews, together with the new Neozawa's Resolve, as well as Zen State, monks now can deal with more dangerous situation and feel like they're equipped for it. This means overall improved survivability, overall improved healing, and overall feeling like you're just not going to be crushed by unexpected bits of damage anymore. There's now more control placed in Brewmaster's hands, which will make him feel naturally tankier. Another change they made to monks is the fact that your Dave, or Neozawa, your Celestial, your main companion, your confidant, for the longest time not felt super impactful for a very, very long time. Like, he's fine as a companion, he does alright, but he's not great overall. Like Zuen, super impactful, increases your damage, causes you to also generate nature damage based on your attacks. Yulon or Chi-Ji from Mistweaver, also highly effective, amping up your healing. But Neozawa, coined in the community as Dave, hasn't really been that good. In a lot of the cases, players would just completely nope out of the whole middle side of your talent tree altogether. So they wanted to make sure that Dave, in the Black Ox, could be made a lot better than ever before. Passively, Dave, on a 2-minute cooldown, you'll summon an effigy on Neozawa, Dave, the Black Ox, for 25 seconds that attacks your primary target, stomping him whenever you cast Purify, which now deals a significant bit of damage. Dave's stomps now hit a lot harder than ever before. And taking a look at the damage output, Stomp is actually a good contribution of my overall damage. It's actually really good. I mean, Flurry Strikes is a lot higher. Keg Smash, of course, is going to be high since that's like my main spammy ability, but Stomp is now not insignificant anymore, and this is massive. Dave also, while active, 40% of the damage laid by Stagger is now instead staggered by Dave, and Dave is healed for 100% of the purified stagger. And now you can control a little bit, or at least increase his stagger a lot more regularly. Dave can now help split a lot more of that stagger, so the monk becomes even more defensive. So now if you're playing around at high stagger amounts, just summoning up Dave, letting him help you offset some of that stagger, as he will just take that damage instead, and you can just heal him by spamming Purify, by spamming Purifying Brew, he'll never go down, he'll help offset the damage, takes damage out of your health bar into his health bar, and he's just going to be self-sustained as long as you're pressing Purifying Brew once in a blue moon. It becomes a lot more effective of a defensive. However, they wanted to make sure that Dave becomes a lot more wanted and a lot more effective outside of just this set of changes. So they added a talent of Walk with the Ox. Your damage and abilities have a chance to invoke Dave, causing him to charge to target location and stomp. The cooldown of invoke Nyozawa Dave is also reduced by 60 seconds, so now he's no longer a 3-minute cooldown, now down to a 2-minute cooldown, and the stomp ability now deals significantly more damage since you get to spawn him fairly regularly. Not only that, there's now also a bonus effect of improved Dave, improved Nyozawa. While active, invoke Nyozawa, the Black Ox, can now be recast once to cause Nyozawa to stomp mightily and knock nearby enemies into the air. This is more of a Mythic Plus change, but this essentially allows Dave to have a knock-up, sending enemies flying sky high. And while the ability itself functions a little weird, it does give you like an actual effect for it. You can see him kind of rush in, and when I press it, you see how the immune, he doesn't actually have like an animation where he knocks enemies up in the air. He doesn't actually like do a stomp, but enemies will go flying in a Mythic Plus dungeon. Trained dummies cannot go flying. That Mythic Plus knockup in particular can be huge, especially when it comes to Brewmaster viability for dungeon content. Normally, crowd controls are massive when it comes to M+. The more ways you can disrupt enemies' cast, whether it is with knockups, whether it is with stuns, disorients, what have you, the more overall control you can have in a dungeon pool. And with Dave now being able to knock enemies up, this increases the stocks of Brewmaster in M+ content in particular, an extra bit of CC. Even though with some limitations, I do like this interaction with Dave and the fact that you can get it from 2 abilities, Weapons of Order and from Invoking Nyozawa itself, so you can actually rotate it pretty regularly. Plus, the ability of Weapons of Order also has a decent bit of cooldown reduction behind it, so you can actually use Dave fairly regularly and use that knock-up and get quite a bit of value out of it from pack to pack, especially in some of the more rougher situations. Plus, Dave himself does a lot more damage than previously, so you kind of want to summon him for damage as well, not just for the defensive value, but he becomes much more a powerful cooldown overall, someone you actually want to use and consider when you want to apply him. He's actually really strong. They took the whole Celestial from kind of a useless one out of the 3 that monks had access to. I guess 4 if you count 2 for Mistweavers. But now he might be one of the better ones. What this created, however, is now you need at least a couple of talent points to invest into Dave, but where are you going to get those talent points from? Previously, monk builds would look something similar to, I don't know, I'm missing a talent here. I guess like something like this, or maybe something like this. More or less. I am missing a talent over here though, so we'll just ignore it for now. But more or less, monks would just ignore the middle row of the talent tree. But now monks need to find at least like 4 talent points from other sources to pick up Dave. And there's a whole mechanic on the left-hand side of the talent tree that you can now technically opt out of. As weird as it sounds, but Breath of Fire can no longer be a rotational mechanic, instead opting out for talents to buff up Dave instead, which is super weird and unusual. Breath of Fire has been a core ability of Brewmaster for quite a significant bit of time now. However, because of the tier sets that we're getting in 11.2, plus the hero challenge which you're now trying to maximize, monks are getting to play a slightly different build. You're basically using Keck Smash and even Tiger Palm, yes, even in AoE content, as either Master Harmony or Shadow Pan a lot more aggressively. Both of those abilities help reduce the cooldown of your basic brews. Purifying Brew, Ox Brew, Celestial Brew, so your basic mitigation abilities are highlighted on all, basically because you have less globals you have to fill, but remove Breath of Fire out of the rotation, as well as its whole mechanic. Blackout Combo can now focus in solely on Keck Smash to help further reduce the cooldown of those abilities, or further amplify Tiger Palm, which actually gets some benefits not from Shadow Pen specifically, but mostly from Master Harmony, though there are other talents as well to help further empower the ability of Tiger Palm further offensively, but also defensively because of that cooldown reduction, since now you have more empty globals and you fill it by spending more energy in between. Everything about this feels so odd and weird and unusual, and even cursed to some degree when it comes to playing Brewmaster, as for the longest time I'm so used to Breath of Fire being like a core ability of this spec. But Dave does need to have talents invested into it. He's way too good in his current state, which is a good thing. I think it's great that they buffed up Dave. Now, I love all the talents they've added for the spec in general, but it feels so weird to give a Breath of Fire. But when you actually look at the positional Breath of Fire in the talent tree, it's not even a core ability. Dave is right down the middle, and they're trying to make him as better as possible because it just flows to the rest of the kit. But Breath of Fire is off to the side. And this made me realize that Brewmaster Monk at some point used to be big on Breath of Fire as a core skill, but not really anymore. When you look at Shadowpan or Master of Harmony as hero talents, a lot of them don't even include a Breath of Fire as a specific ability that is part of the core skill. So a lot of them will rely on basic abilities, Tiger Palms, Blackout Kicks, Kegs, Rising Sun Kicks, a lot of those basic skills, when monks already can deal quite a bit of extra AoE damage through those effects where they don't necessarily need a Breath of Fire for additional AoE. I mean, in a lot of the cases, Keg Smash and a couple of AoEs from, I don't know, Spinning Crane Kick maybe, or maybe just Cleave, Blackout Kicks, usually is enough to pick up aggro, so damage-wise, aggro-wise, monks never really had any issue there. And you basically just getting to refocus the playstyle and narrow it down a little bit, literally down the talent tree, mostly buffing up Nuzawa, which helps out quite a decent bit. It is the most unusual way to play Brewmaster, in my opinion, but it's one that I kind of find refreshing in a way. I like this. I feel like I'm basically a lot more defensive, but a lot more aggressive as well, and the tiers that you are getting at 11.2 also feel really, really good to play into, whether you're looking to play something more aggressive with Shadowpan, or maybe a little bit more defensive as Master of Harmony. I think for Brewmaster, this is probably, I would say, a bit of a glow up in terms of the talent tree. It's a nice refresher. I like the amount of defensive talents. I like the amount of opportunity for Dave to shine, but also I love the fact that it's getting a bit of a playstyle reshuffle in the next season, and potentially could be a very solid option when it comes to tanks, at least hopefully, when it comes to Mythic Plus and potentially even raiding. This, unless they end up nerfing this to the ground, actually gets me kind of excited to pick up my monk and play a bit more Brewmaster going forward, especially with some of the variations and changes that we're getting with this upcoming update. But with everything being said, as always, I do want to thank all of you guys so much for watching, and I hope you guys did enjoy the video. If you did enjoy it or found it informative, go ahead and give this video a like. I would very, very much appreciate it. Also, join our Discord community, especially if you want to keep up with any of the newest class changes as soon as they appear over on the PTR realms. Also, let me know your thoughts in the comments down below. What are your thoughts on Brewmaster iteration over in 11.2? Are you excited for it? Are you worried about it? Is it something you're potentially looking to pick up and maybe even try out and play? And how well do you think they're going to fare when it comes to the end game viability of this spec going forward? Let me know those thoughts in the comments down below. And as always, I'll see all of you guys in the next one.